Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic, which is what if Naruto was forced into a political marriage with Temari Part 3. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Thinking about you. It had been a few days since their first date, and so far things were going well with the two soon-to-be married couple. Sure, there were the few things like how sometimes they had to race to get to the good bathroom, Temari telling him that he should stop throwing things around at random places and putting them away properly. Naruto also didn't like how she had so many products out on the sink all the time, and also how she didn't let him eat enough ramen. But even with the small issues, they managed to get through them. After all, life wasn't perfect. With the team training and going out on a simple dinner date, things between them were slowly growing. At the moment, they were in their backyard as she was helping him with wind training. Both were sitting down as he had a rock between his hands, trying as hard as he could to cut it in two. It just wasn't that easy. The rock was pretty solid and he was finding it difficult to keep his wind element stable. "Ah, damn it!" Naruto yelled out as he lost his concentration again. Temari sighed. She wished that Naruto would learn some patience. The boy kept expecting to get everything done right on the first try. "Naruto, how many times have I told you to relax? You can't just keep going at it without thinking or concentrating." "I'm trying," Naruto snapped out, glaring at the rock in his hands. "Don't snap at me, mister, just because you're frustrated," Temari said, slightly angry. Naruto sighed and nodded. "Sorry, I didn't mean it, but it's just so hard. I mean, how come I did shadow clones in one night and the Rasengan in a month but not get anywhere with this?" "Well, first off," Temari started to explain. "From what Kakashi said, you're unique when it comes to shadow clones. Even I haven't even tried to learn that one yet. Now as for Rasengan, well, maybe you're more talented with shape manipulation, plus this isn't supposed to be easy anyway." Temari got up and got behind him and laid her hands on his shoulders. She felt him tense up in surprise at the contact. "Just relax, okay? You can't do this if you're all tense." Naruto swallowed as he tried to calm his mind, but it was kind of hard to do at the moment. He tried not to think of her hands and how light their touch was against him, or that fact he could smell the scent of her hair as she was this close to him. A girl had never been this close to him and he was a little nervous about it, but he tried to push that aside and think of wind chakra. She had explained how it was supposed to feel and the shape he was supposed to have in his mind about it. As his mind was wondering, he heard a small crack and looked startled at his hands. He saw a small crack had formed in the rock and he got a huge smile on his face. "Hey, look, I did it," Naruto said, showing her the rock. "You cracked it. It's a step in the right direction, but don't get cozy yet," she told him with a smirk. She straightened up, stretching out her back. "I think I'll go in and relax in some nice hot water." "Okay, I'll want to keep at this for a bit longer," Naruto smiled as he went back to his work. Temari wasn't surprised. Naruto trained to the point that went beyond what a normal person would do. In fact, she was actually starting to push herself as well. His attitude seemed to be a bit infectious with her, plus she didn't want to be left behind either. As she went into the house, Naruto looked at his rock and kept on trying to picture how wind-natured chakra was supposed to be and feel it out. He wanted to cut the rock in half soon so he could start learning all kinds of kick-ass wind elemental jutsus. He lost track of how long he was into his training, but so far he couldn't get the hang of it. He tried to relax, but each time he failed at getting the results, the more frustrated he got. After a while he took a break as he glared at the rock. It was like it was mocking him, but he would show it who was boss. "So how have you been, kid?" Naruto jumped and turned around to see Jiraiya standing behind him. Naruto hadn't seen the old pervert in a while and smiled a bit seeing him. "Things are going good, Ero Sennin," Naruto said. The Toad Sage scowled a bit. "Damn it, how many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me that?" Naruto just ignored it and held up his rock. "Look, I managed to get it to crack. A bit more training and I'll be able to learn all kinds of kick-ass moves." Jiraiya stood closer as he looked at the rock. It wasn't much for progress, but for a boy his age to be learning to do elemental training after shape training was impressive. But he also didn't want to give the kid a swelled head. The boy already had problems with that and he needed to learn to keep that in check. "Not bad, but you still got a lot of work ahead of you," He could see Naruto looked a bit disappointed. So then how are things going with that Suna girl? Anything interesting? Naruto was surprised by the sudden change in topic as he scratched the back of his head. Well, Tsunade Bachan wants me to take her on dates to get to know her more. Jiraiya chuckled a bit, he never knew his old teammate liked to play matchmaker. So how have you been doing on that front? Naruto blushed a bit as he went through the dates they had so far. He talked about the first one on top of the Hokage monument. Naruto thought back to that date and he had to admit that she was pretty that day, and he also remembered how she walked up those steps, causing him to blush at the memory. When he was talking about the others, he suddenly heard perverted giggling and scratching noises. He turned to see Jiraiya was grinning as he was scribbling down notes. What the hell? Naruto yelled at him. Hey, don't stop now, Jiraiya said as he kept on making notes. This is good stuff, kid. I didn't know you had it in you. You keep this up and I think I'll make my next book on this. Ah, I can see it now. Ika Ika Princess, the story of a boy trying to win the heart of an exotic princess from another land to prevent a war. It will have action, adventure, romance, and it could be my next big seller. You're not making one of your perverted books about me and Temari. Naruto yelled as he tried to grab the notes. Come on, kid, I'll cut you in for a percentage then, he told the boy as he tried to keep his notes. Give me that, Naruto yelled out. Inside, Temari was enjoying the hot water. The way it soothed her made her wish that Suna had enough water to spare for something like this. Although this was their small personal onsen, she didn't dare go in naked. She had bought a small bathing suit to use when she was in here. Besides, what if company came over, or what if Naruto walked in on her? That incident with the shower had been embarrassing enough. She blushed remembering that moment. Sure, they were going to be married, but that didn't mean she was ready to have any man see her naked just yet. She took the time to relax and think on things. So far it wasn't so bad how things were going in her life. It was still strange, and she knew she might never totally get used to living in this village, but it was getting better. Another thing she was thinking about was Naruto. The boy kept on surprising her. He wasn't all that bright at times, and yet he could do something insightful as well. In some areas he was weak, but in others he was so far ahead of everyone it just made no sense to her logical mind. Maybe that was why she was starting to find him so interesting. He was like a living puzzle, and everything she felt she was getting close to solving it, Naruto would do something that would change all of that. Another thing was that he treated her pretty well. She had been expecting when she heard of this whole arrangement to act the perfect housewife. A fate she would have hated and most likely had rather killed herself within the year, but he never once told her to do anything, he always asked her first. Plus apparently he had a thing about being put into place by strong female types. With how Sakura popped him on the head and how Tsunade threw something at his head for the few times she had seen when he just barged into her office and called her Bachan, Temari was starting to think the boy was a masochist. On the bright side, with all of that, she could control him when he got out of line. Although at times he could be very stubborn person as well. Her mind went to their dates that they had, and she was surprised at how much she enjoyed her time with the boy. Temari had never had the chance for a dating life, but so far Naruto was making up for it. He tried so hard that it was very sweet as well. Damn it, Ero Sennin. Naruto's loud voice broke her out of her calming thoughts as she heard an argument going on outside. Her left eye twitched a bit at being disturbed. She gave a small growl of annoyance and picked up a towel and quickly dried herself off as she put it around her waist to go see what the problem was. She made it to the back door and moved it open, and there was Naruto wrestling with some old man over some kind of papers. What the hell is going on here? She demanded angrily. Naruto jumped in surprised, and Jiraiya took the opportunity to get back his previous notes. Naruto scowled at him as he started to answer Temari. Ero Sennin here was being a pervert again, he wanted to. He trailed off as he went to look at her. There was Temari, slightly wet, her hair still damp and hung down close to her face. She only had on a towel and a swimming top on that he could see. He blushed deeply as he had never seen her with so much skin showing. Jiraiya on the other hand noticed the boy's look and had to admit the girl was a lovely young thing, pity she was too young for him. He slapped the boy on the back hard enough to cause the boy to fall forward. Nice catch, Gaki, you got a real winner with that one. What the hell is that supposed to mean and who the hell are you? Temari demanded. Allow me to introduce myself. Jiraiya got into his usual stance as he became the weird dance of his. I am the sage of Mount Myobokuzan, the toad hermit, the one that the ladies adore and swoon over his charm and power. I am one of the legendary three, I am Jiraiya the Sannin. Temari blinked a couple of times, then 4 times and then 5 more times before she said anything. You're supposed to be the Jiraiya, she said deadpanned. She just couldn't understand why the Leaf Village seemed to have the most bizarre collection of ninja in the entire world. That I am, my dear, and you must be the Temari girl that my new apprentice is going to marry. Jiraiya was already taking notes in his head to make the princess in his story a blonde with a fiery temper. Although many might confuse the character with another character of his, Ayane, which was based on Tsunade, well, nothing a little editing of the character couldn't fix. I am, Temari told him. So what's all this about? At that, Naruto snapped out of his daze seeing Temari in that state of dress and pointed accusingly at Jiraiya. He was going to make one of his perverted books about us and I was trying to stop him. His what? Temari glared at the man. Ero Sennin is the guy that writes those books that you see Kakashi-sensei reading, Naruto told her, crossing his arms over his chest. Temari got an angry tick on her eye as she glared at the old man. Jiraiya, after a lifetime of knowing Tsunade, had developed an instinct about angry women. He could already see that this girl shared a few of his teammates' attributes, although it was too bad that Tsunade's most visual appealing attributes weren't there for Naruto to enjoy, but the anger this woman had was just like Tsunade. Temari was coming to terms with marrying Naruto, leaving her village and living here, but having one of those perverted books written about her was crossing a line. There was no way she could hold her head up high if people found out about that, and her reputation could be ruined. Now she really wished she had her battle fan handy, as she had an urge to slam it into his skull. Got it, Naruto shouted as he managed to snag the notes from Jiraiya's hand while he was busy with Temari. Damn it, that could be my best work yet, you brat. Jiraiya yelled out as he started to chase Naruto around the yard. I don't think so, Naruto yelled out as he made his favorite hand seal, and suddenly a large amount of white smoke showed up. When it was gone, there were at least over a dozen Narutos as they ran off in different directions. Jiraiya cursed as he picked one out and started to chase it. They all left the backyard and Temari smirked as she had to admit, Naruto came up with a good plan, and was further impressed when a rock suddenly turned back into Naruto. He was grinning happily as he used his shadow clones to get rid of Jiraiya while he had turned into a rock. Temari came up behind him. Niece, that should keep him busy for a while. How long do your clones last anyway? Naruto wondered about it as he shrugged. I have no idea, usually I get rid of them or they hit something. Then he turned around and blushed as he was face to face with Temari, and given their difference in height he had a good view of her chest. His eyes were just drawn to the cleavage in front of him and he couldn't look away. Temari suddenly noticed what he was looking at and quickly crossed her arms. Hey, eyes up, she yelled, and Naruto took a step back. Sorry, I didn't meant to, Naruto said as both teens were blushing hugely. Hentai, Temari shouted as she started to chase Naruto around as he started to run from her. What they didn't know was that in one of the trees Jiraiya was watching them. He giggled as he was writing down on a spare notepad. If Naruto could think he could get one on him after years of being a pervert, the boy was in for a surprise. He let the boy think that he had grabbed the real notes and chased a clone just long enough to get out of sight. He couldn't help but chuckle as he watched the two, and his mind was reminded of a similar moment between Naruto's parents. Minato had accidentally crashed into Kushina and a hand had landed on a Brite. That girl had chased the poor boy all over the village before she caught him. He giggled as he started to write down more scenes. He couldn't wait to get this book out. Elsewhere, Kakashi Hatake was having a hard time, although you would never know it from just looking at him. He was sitting in his small apartment trying to read his book, but he just kept on reading the same page over and over again. He eventually put it away as he sat up and sighed. He was both happy and not so happy with how things were turning out for his team. Temari was helping both Naruto and Sakura in ways he never expected. She was helping both with their taijutsu and he was helping out here and there as well with hints and improvements. Temari's training in Wind Elemental was going to help Naruto out a lot as well when he got the hang of it. Kakashi also managed to get a couple of water elemental jutsus for Sakura to start training in as he could help her out with that. The only major problem was Sasuke. The boy was being more withdrawn and his quest for power had only gotten worse since that curse mark. In fact, the boy's behavior had changed a lot since the Forest of Death and not in the good way. The boy had been coming along and if things had kept as they were he might have started to open up and changed for the best. But Orochimaru had ruined that and now the man was after the boy. Sasuke already was one of the strongest genin, knew 2 different elemental attacks which was something someone didn't learn until they made Jonin, but it still wasn't enough it would seem. He wanted to learn shape manipulation but he wanted Sasuke to learn other things before that. Like what it meant to be part of a team and that he didn't have to go through it all alone. Plus he had already spent a month training Sasuke and he needed to round out the team more before he could even consider that but Sasuke wasn't the patient type. Kakashi looked at the window and he saw the plant that Naruto had given him a while back. He smiled at how the boy had grown it himself and given it to him. Kakashi had gotten a book on plants to make sure he took care of it as well, as a present from students should be honored. He was glad that Temari was helping him out as the boy needed the extra help as his schooling was lacking in the academy. He was secretly glad when Naruto got Iruka as a teacher. Sakura he definitely needed to get that girl someone that could be a role model for her. She could become great if she was become more serious as a ninja and she could go far. Temari was already an impressive ninja but her weakness was her weakness in closer quarters so far. But then his mind ran back to Sasuke and how that seal was on him. That counter seal that he had put on Sasuke would only work with the power of that person's will but there were 2 facts that were also in play. The first being that he wasn't a seal master like the 4th of Jiraiya were, sure he knew more than most but he wasn't an expert. The other thing was that the curse seal was Orochimaru's personal design and no one other than him knew all that much about it. Maybe if he knew something more about it then he could help out more and make sure that Sasuke's mark was totally repressed, but the only person that knew anything was a missing nin that would not help out. Then he suddenly remembered that there was another person he could ask, that is if she wanted to. Kakashi got his vest and put it on, more out of habit than anything else, and jumped out his window and started his search. Hopefully she was still in the village and not on some mission. He knew a bit about the ninja in question but not much. He respected her skills and he had worked with her a few times in the past. Sure she was a bit eccentric but she wasn't all that bad, she just liked to have some fun. Unfortunately besides a few things and that she was close friends with Kurenai, there wasn't much he knew of the younger woman. It wasn't until an hour later when he felt like he would have to seek out Kurenai for information that he found his target. There she was coming out of a dango shop, eating the last of said treat. Anko had been having a nice relaxing break so far. Nothing major was going on with all the reconstruction going on. Thankfully her apartment had survived being crushed by a giant snake, the buildings next to hers not so much so she needed to get out when the construction started. There was just no way for her to sleep in or relax with all that racket going on, but at least she wasn't homeless like some of the more unfortunate ones. She had spent the day shopping for some new supplies, some food and looking for something interesting to wear as well. Hopefully there might be a mission soon as she was starting to get a little bored though, something to at least keep things interesting. Hello there Anko. She stopped at the smooth and relaxed voice behind her as she turned to see one, Kakashi Hatake behind her. She grinned seeing the man. He defiantly was looking to make things interesting as Kakashi was never boring. Plus he had that little firecracker on his team as well. So what is it? Anko asked him to the point. Kakashi gave an amused smile. Glad to see you too, but honestly I need your help with something that only you can do. Now Anko was smiling a bit more. What's the name, and do you want that person still breathing? Nothing like that, Kakashi told her and her shoulders slumped in disappointment. I need your help for a student of mine. Anko blinked and thought about it for a second. Oh, which one? Sasuke, Kakashi said in a more serious tone. Now Anko's mood took a bit of a darker turn. She knew all about what had happened in the Forest of Death between her old teacher and Sasuke and she knew his plans for the Uchiha. She suddenly felt a brief twitch where her own curse mark was on her neck. She shifted a little as her shoulder rolled, but Kakashi caught it. He nodded as he saw her eyes. Yeah, I need your help with his curse seal. I don't know enough about it and I'm afraid that the counter seal I put on isn't working that well. Counter seal? There's a counter and no one told me. Anko said a little more dangerously. Kakashi held up his hands in defense. I had to rush to put it on and I wasn't sure how well it would work. Plus he seemed to be having a hard time with it and I never seen you have any issues with yours, so I assumed it was fine. I'm also surprised that the third never mentioned it, as I did report it to him. Anko let a deep sigh go as she let her anger go as well. She knew better than that, and if there was a problem with the boys then it might not work well with her anyway. But still it stung a bit that the old man never told her that Kakashi was experimenting with a counter. Sure, her own seal didn't always activate, but she had to constantly be on guard if it ever did. And the few times it did react, it was painful and left her vulnerable like in the forest of death. Anko? Kakashi asked, seeing how she was. I'm fine, Anko said, looking up at him. If I help you with this, you think you can help me? Kakashi rubbed his chin. It might not be too much of a problem, although I might have to get someone else to put it on you, as I'm not sure you'll let me try anything what I used on Sasuke. Why is that? Anko demanded, her hands on her hips. The seal required Sasuke to have it painted on his upper body, his bare upper body. He clarified. Anko's face lit up in realization. Oh, yeah, thanks for the heads up, but trust me, I got nothing to be ashamed of, but thanks for the heads up. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, so then what do we do first? Kakashi was glad for her help, and who knew, maybe by studying her seal he could help her out as well. Helping hands. So, why are we walking to the Hokage's tower? Anko asked as she noticed where Kakashi was walking. She had agreed to help him since she figured it would be a nice way of sticking it to Orochimaru if she could foul up any plans he was making for the Uchiha boy. I need Tsunade-sama to see if she can find Jiraiya, Kakashi said to her. I'm good, but he's a true seal master after all. He taught the fourth many of his sealing techniques and knowledge, so having his help would be good. Anko nodded as that made sense to her, although once again she felt a small pang on why he wasn't called in for her. Then again she did remember Tsunade had been looking in on her when they had found her lost and confused. It was one of the reasons that Anko was glad that Tsunade was the new Hokage, as she had a huge respect for the woman. She had been a big help in Anko's recovery, and so Anko felt she owed the woman a lot. So what can you tell me about your seal? Kakashi asked as they kept on walking. Anything you can think of would be helpful. Anko sighed as she thought about anything she could think of. Well, it hurts like a bastard for me at times. Like when I was with Orochimaru in the forest, I could barely move. Did he start the seal, or do you think it was reacting to his presence? Anko hadn't thought which it was at the time. She was more focused on just trying to kill the bastard. She thought about all that he took from her. The uncertainty of what had happened to her plagued her for years, with all the missing holes in her memories. All the memories of when Orochimaru became her sensei were just gone, and it hurt a lot. Every day she wondered if there was a face in the crowd she had known, or had she any good memories buried up inside her mind. Every time she tried to think, it would hurt her, and then she only got angrier. Anko thought about her fight with Orochimaru and all that pain and anger, all that hatred built up in her. Anko winced as the mark on her neck throbbed. What is it? Kakashi asked her, helping her to steady herself. Just a flash of pain, I get them now and then. She told him, pushing him away when she could stand. She hated being seen as weak among others. Kakashi was silent a moment as he thought about something. What was it you were feeling? What was I feeling? Kakashi nodded. Please describe your emotions at that moment. Anko didn't know what he was getting at. I felt anger, a lot of it. I was remembering how I was feeling in my fight with Orochimaru, and then the pain started. Just anger. What do you want to hear? Anko asked, getting annoyed. Because you're a bit angry now and seem fine, so is there anything more than just anger? Hatred. I was feeling hatred, Anko told him. Kakashi nodded as if something was fitting into place. Tell me, is Orochimaru the only thing that you truly hate? Okay, what the hell are you getting at? Anko demanded. She wasn't liking all the questions. Sure, she agreed to help, but this was reminding her a bit too much like when she had been interrogated when she had been brought back to the village. She didn't like that time she had spent there in the dark cells as they were trying to see if she was a traitor or not. I think the seal reacts to very dark emotions, Kakashi started to tell her his theory. Hatred seems to be a key in activating it. If you truly hate the man, then the seal must have activated when it felt your hate growing. It sounds logical given what Sasuke's motivation is with his brother. Hatred for killing his clan and family, Anko said softly as it started to make sense to her as well. Orochimaru was just the sort of twisted person to make a seal that feed on negative emotions. Sure, she felt anger at times, but the seal never activated, and people say they hate something, but was that true hatred? She wanted to kill Orochimaru, she wanted to make him pay and for him to suffer like she had. Her hand went to her neck, feeling the spot where the seal was. It could be at least one of the keys to the seal, Kakashi said, breaking her out of her own thoughts. There might be other emotions that will trigger it, but that can be done for another time. However, do you sometimes feel this pain at other moments? Anko nodded her head. After certain bad dreams it hurts, not much but enough to be very annoying. Also, I think it does react to Orochimaru's presence. During the start of the fight I could feel it, but I could ignore it. It wasn't until later that it got too much for me. So heightened emotional states do affect it, and I'm not surprised that Orochimaru would cause it as well as he did give it to you. Kakashi told her. Great, so what does this mean? I got to control my emotions, like that would happen, Anko muttered to herself. She would be the first to admit that she was pretty much a free spirit. Sure, ninja weren't supposed to show emotions, but that just wasn't the type she was. In a serious mission she could control herself, she had that much discipline, but total control wasn't her. She cast a look to Kakashi, who always seemed to have so much control, and wondered how he was able to do it. Well, we'll just think a way around it then. Kakashi turned to her, and from how his eye was closed she could tell he was smiling at her. She nodded, although she wasn't sure how he would, but she felt a bit better otherwise. Later that day, it was late afternoon by the time Kakashi showed up. Even though he had a valid excuse, his genins, mainly Sakura and Naruto, hadn't believed about helping a fellow ninja out. He didn't go into details about what exactly he was doing, as he wasn't sure how Sasuke would react to him working on that seal of his again. The boy was becoming slightly worse, it seemed, and he was keeping a careful eye on him just in case. He had no idea what Sasuke was thinking or would do, but the path the boy was walking down worried him. Training went well for the most part. Sakura was coming along fine with her water manipulation. In fact, with her perfect chakra control she was getting the hang of it faster than Kakashi would have thought. All she lacked was the stamina and chakra supply. Sasuke was still slightly brooding, but he seemed preoccupied with something lately, but Kakashi couldn't tell with what. Naruto and Temari were proving to be forming good teamwork, most likely due to the living arrangements and the extra training she was helping him with. Since Kakashi was meeting up with Anko later on and hopefully Jiraiya, he had to make it a shorter day than normal. Sasuke went off as usual, but Sakura asked Temari if she could help her train a bit more. Temari didn't know much about the girl and figured since they were on the same team they might as well try to get to know each other more. So she told Naruto she would be home later. As Sakura trained with Temari, her respect for the older girl was growing. Although Temari used a fan mostly in battle, her hand-to-hand skills were better than Sakura's. She was coming along with the water jutsu that Kakashi had been teaching her, and she almost had it, but she lacked enough chakra to do it more than a few times. But she was improving. She used to only be able to do it 3 times, but lately she pushed it up to 5. Temari was another big help. The woman was helping her in taijutsu, and Sakura could notice some improvements. She learned a lot of things that they never taught at the academy. One thing she learned was when you punch with a hook to keep your elbow up, so if you miss with the fist you can get your elbow in next. You could also catch the brow of your opponent with that elbow, you can bust open the skin making blood flow into the eye. After a while both of them were getting tired as Temari called for a break. Sakura was thankful as she felt like she was about to drop any second anyway. Both girls rested up against a tree, just enjoying the time to relax. You're getting better, Temari commented to the other girl. Really? I still feel like I need to go a lot further. Yeah, you're right, Temari said as Sakura seemed to deflate at that. But at the rate you're training it will take less time. What were you doing all that time anyway before now? I mean, if you trained like this since you started the academy, then you should be stronger. Oh, well. Sakura bit her lip, remembering how she had spent a lot of her free time trying to pursue Sasuke. Oh brother, Temari sighed, don't tell me you were one of those girls chasing after the Uchiha boy. So instead of training that could help you and your team survive, you chased after a boy, real smart. Well, Sasuke is worth it. Sakura defended herself. Worth getting killed over. Temari snapped at her. This isn't a game, people will die on missions. I mean, Naruto had to save your ass from my brother while your precious Uchiha couldn't do jack. Tell me, do you always need to be rescued in your missions or do anything? Sakura wanted to say she did a lot of things, but she couldn't think of anything. Hell, she hadn't even thought it was Naruto who had rescued her at first. In fact, during the Forest of Death, it had been Naruto that came out of nowhere to save them from Orochimaru. She had tried to take care of the boys when they were both taken out, but she hadn't done much. Sure, she had set up traps and had done everything she could have done. She had fought her hardest. She had bled and got hurt bad to protect her teammates, but she still had to be saved, this time by Lee. It was then that she realized she needed to be stronger to support her team instead of being a burden. Temari saw the girl's face. She knew that she was harsh, but she was on this team now and the girl needed to face the facts. Look, at least you're trying to improve. I know you're right and I am trying, Sakura said weakly. It's just that I'm always watching their backs. Even Naruto, who was the dead last, is stronger than me now. Well, he's surprising, so don't feel too bad. Temari gave a small smile, thinking back. First time I met him, I didn't think much of him at all. Just an idiot with a very loud mouth and who wore too much orange. Sakura giggled at that. Yeah, you really should try to get him to wear something else at times. Temari rolled her eyes. Trust me, I've been trying. Somehow I don't think Naruto would be Naruto without some orange in his life. And being a little dense and loud. Sakura commented as Temari gave a small nod. He is surprising though, Temari sighed as she looked to the sky. He never gives up and he's actually kind of sweet at times. He cares a lot for his friends and those people that are precious to him. Sakura nodded, remembering all the things Naruto had done. She felt bad for being mean to him when they were at school together, and now she was considering him to be a very good friend. When Ino and her had stopped being friends, she had been very lonely and she felt bad for making Naruto feel the same. Maybe if she had known what she did now, they could have at least been friends for each other. Well, I can fix that now at least, Sakura thought. So then, how are things going with you and Naruto? Sakura asked the older girl. Temari gave a small blush as she looked away. We're doing fine. He tried so hard on the dates, it's nice, but I keep telling him to just be himself. But he is a nice guy, but I don't know much about him. Was he always like this? Temari thought she might be able to get some more information about Naruto through Sakura. She knew little of his past and figured since she was a teammate she would know more. Sakura wasn't sure how to answer that at first. Well, I'm not sure. We were never really friends before now. How come? He seems like a decent guy, Temari asked, confused. Well, mainly it was just that a lot of the kids didn't hang out with him. He used to pull all kinds of pranks and stuff and he would act out. I also heard a lot of parents telling their kids to stay away from him, but I never knew why. I heard kids asking their parents that same question, but I never heard a real answer. Temari got a small scowl on her face hearing that. Okay, what the hell is the deal with this? I've noticed people glaring my way at times, but lately it's also at him. At first I thought it was just because he was with me, but I keep hearing stuff like this. There is something going on here and I want to figure out what's going on. Whatever was going on, Temari wanted to figure out what was going on. With Naruto. Naruto was on his way home with his mind on things. He had to change his route as he found himself walking to his old apartment complex, and not for the first time. It would take some getting used to living in a new place, it would seem. But still, so far life was okay. The house was coming along and it was nice having someone with him all the time, and he felt that he and Temari were at least becoming nice friends. It was just nice waking up and having someone there. He hadn't realized just how empty his old apartment was. Sure, he had things, but until now he never knew what it was like having someone living with him. Naruto knew loneliness as he had been alone for most of his life, but looking back on his old life now made that time seem even darker than he thought. It was a depressing thought, but he quickly brightened as he thought of how he would never had to go back to that kind of life. His thoughts were suddenly ripped from him as he felt someone gripping his jumpsuit and pulled him to face them. He was surprised to see Ino was the one there. Ino, what the hell? So how are things going? Ino asked, grinning. With what? Ino scowled a little at him. What do you mean with what? With Temari, of course. Oh. Naruto blushed a bit as he scratched the back of his head. Things are going good. We've gone on a few dates so far and she seemed to enjoy herself. He didn't want to mention the whole thing with Jiraiya and how she had chased him around for a bit after she caught him staring at her breets. But in his defense, how was he not to look? They were practically at eye level with him and she was wearing a two-piece at the time. So how has my advice been working out? Ino asked him. Have you gotten her any gifts or done something really nice for her? Well, a few things, but how many gifts do I do and what else should I do? Naruto asked her. He was willing to get any advice from anyone, well, maybe except for Jiraiya. He was still pissed about him trying to make one of his smut books about him and Temari. Well, there are several things you can do for a woman. Ino started to get into lecture mode with Naruto. Don't forget to compliment a woman at times. Things like hair, looks are important. If she got a new dress, then comment on it because it's nice to know if a guy notices these things. Plus, if she needs help, you should help her before she has to ask. That shows that you really do care. Naruto nodded his head as he tried to remember all of this. Another thing is how you look, Ino told him. Naruto frowned as she looked at him. What's that supposed to mean? Well, for one, you need to get rid of that hideous jumpsuit. Ino pointed at his beloved suit. I mean all that bright orange. I'm amazed you haven't gotten killed. It just screams out, here I am, come and kill me, to the enemy. But I like orange. Naruto whined. Ino sighed. Well, how about getting something with a little less? I mean, it's not exactly the kind of thing a ninja should wear. Naruto would have to think about it. He just loved orange, plus the jumpsuit was neat. It had a lot of pocket space and it was easy to repair and clean, not to mention it was cheap too. It was very comfortable as well, so he wore it all the time. But was it really that bad for a ninja? He thought about what others wore and not many wore bright colors all that much. In fact, even Sasuke had taken to wearing a new black outfit that he had to admit was better than the older one. Well, what would be better? Naruto asked as he never did have any real fashion sense. Ino grinned. How much money you got on you? Naruto blinked a few times as he pulled out Gama-chan, his frog wallet. With the new pay he was getting, he had a bit more money these days. Plus there was that he had saved up over his life as well back at the home, but he kept that for emergencies or if he really needed it. Ino took a quick look and nodded. Okay, looks like you got enough for at least a couple of things. A couple of things? Ino suddenly pulled him on his arm. Yeah, come on, I'm taking you shopping and helping you to pick out some decent clothing. Before he could even stop her, she was dragging him through the streets of Konoha. Uzumaki home. Temari got back feeling tried and her feet were killing her. She placed her battle fan against the wall by the front door and kicked off her footwear. She noticed that Naruto's shoes were there as well and he must be home. She went straight the couch and fell onto it with a groan. After a bit she rolled onto her back and just felt like going into the onsen or at least in a hot bath, but she couldn't even move at this point. Hey Temari, that you? Called Naruto from another room. Her later entered and saw her sprawled onto the couch. Man, you look like you and Sakura-chan must have went all out. Temari said dryly. God, I feel tired and my feet are killing me. Naruto thought back to some of the things Ino had talked about. Maybe I could help out. Temari looked at him for a moment. How? Well, I could. Naruto wasn't sure, the words just left his mouth without really thinking of what he could do. He had been hoping that she would know what he could do. He had to think of something and he tried to think of what he would want if his feet were hurting. I could give you a foot rub. Temari thought about it. She only got something like that from a spa, but it had been a very long time since she had gone to one of those. It would sound very nice at this moment as well. Alright, but don't try anything perverted. She warned him. I'm not Ero Senin, you know, Naruto said as he got to her feet. He wasn't sure what to do, so he started out gently with just rubbing them. Then he trailed his finger over her arch and she jumped with a yelp. Don't do that. Oh, why is that? Naruto asked her. Because it tickles, Temari said. Oh, it does it? Naruto grinned at her and Temari's eyes widened as she had seen that grin on his face during those pranks of theirs. Before she could pull her feet away, he grabbed one and started to tickle her sensitive areas of her feet. Temari tried to kick him, but she couldn't get a decent shot in with her one free leg, and then he suddenly managed to sit gently on her leg, pinning it. Now he could concentrate on tickling her foot, and soon Temari couldn't fight back anymore. She was laughing so hard she could barely say a word out. Give up? Naruto asked as he paused. You little bastard, she said, which only got him to start again. Okay, I give. Naruto chuckled as he released her feet and got a kick to his arm for it. That wasn't funny. It was for me, he grinned at her. You should laugh more, you know. You got a nice laugh. Temari was silent. No one had ever said that about her. Then again, she hadn't really laughed before she had met Naruto. He made her smile even if it was just something stupid he was doing, or from him actually trying to make her feel better. Naruto told her to put her feet back, but only after she made him promise not to tickle her feet again. It took Naruto a bit to see what would work and what didn't as he listened to what Temari told her, what was feeling nice or what hurt from too much pressure. After about a few minutes, Naruto figured out how to give her a good foot rub. Okay, that feels so good now, Temari sighed as she smiled as he rubbed her feet. Too bad you can't get my shoulders too. Sure I can, he said as he suddenly made a clone and told him to take over her feet. Temari had forgotten about that, and although it was something no boy had done to her before, she wasn't sure if she was ready for him to be that close to her in this kind of situation. But she was starting to trust him and her feet were feeling much better. One of the drawbacks to using her battle fan was the strain it put on her neck and shoulders area. How come your skin is soft? Naruto asked, confused as he felt her skin on her neck. I mean, aren't you from a desert? Piece of advice if you want to be rice in Suna is that you invest in certain things. Water import is one, but another are skin care products, Temari explained to him. You think anyone likes to feel coarse skin all the time? You'd be amazed at how much of that stuff people buy, given how much damage heat and sand can do to your skin. Naruto hadn't thought about it. Then again, he had seen those large bottles of skin care products that she had in her room and in the main bathroom. Eventually she decided to give him a chance and moved down a bit to give him room. Naruto was a little nervous at this point. No girl had even let him do anything like this before. But he gently placed his hands on her shoulders and started to experiment with what felt good for her. After a little trial and error, he eventually found what seemed to work. From Temari started to sigh at times. Temari was surprised with herself that she let him do this, but at the moment it felt too damn good to care. Damn, always with the surprises, Temari thought, feeling much more relaxed now with one Naruto on her feet and the other by her shoulders and neck. It felt very good. Okay, maybe there will be something else to look forward to in this marriage. Temari felt her eyelids getting heavy and soon she rested against Naruto as he continued to work on her. After a while, Naruto noticed that she had fallen asleep and he looked at her. Her face was more peaceful like this. She sighed as she seemed to snuggle against him a little and Naruto blushed as she did. His clone was giving him a scowl like he wished he had been in his place but didn't say anything to wake her. Naruto looked down at her and he smiled. She really was pretty, especially when she relaxed her face like this. All the tension was gone and it was like he was seeing a part of her that she kept hidden from the world. He really shouldn't enjoy this, but he couldn't help it, but eventually he figured he might as well put her in her room. He motioned for the clone to get closer and whispered something to him. He nodded and ran off quietly upstairs as Naruto gently moved Temari into his arms. She was a bit bigger, but Naruto was stronger than he looked. Carrying her bridal style, he gently walked up the stairs. Her gentle breathing was against his neck and he had to admit it felt nice. He gulped as he felt himself getting all warm. Her door was open when he got there as the clone had made sure it was in. Her bed covers were pulled back too. Naruto gently laid her in the bed and covered her up, and for a moment he stood there smiling at her. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't look away from her like this. On instinct, he gently ran a hand over her cheek and she moaned something in her sleep as he quickly pulled back in case she woke up and asked what he was doing. He saw his clone there and jerked his head to the door. A couple of hours later, Temari woke up feeling well rested. She wasn't sure why at first as she looked around. She was confused as to why she was in her bed. The last thing she remembered was getting a very good massage by Naruto. She blushed remembering that she had no idea the blonde was so good. Damn, get a hold of yourself, Temari thought as she got out of bed. Okay, so he's good with his hands, no need to get like that, even though it did feel really nice. She sighed to herself as she wondering how long she had been out and how she got into bed. Temari smelled something cooking and followed it to the kitchen. Hey, you're up. I wasn't sure if I should wake you or not. Naruto smiled at her as he noticed her walking in. It's alright, by the way, how did I get up to my room? Oh, that. Naruto blushed a bit as he turned around to the stove. Well, you fell asleep against me and I thought you might be more comfortable in your bed, so I carried you up there. Oh, thanks. Temari blushed a bit at how she had fallen asleep against him. At least she was sure he didn't try anything with her. As she sat down, she remembered her earlier talk with Sakura about him and decided she would try and get to know those that knew Naruto best. From their talks, he talked a lot about a guy named Iruka who was teaching at the academy and some kid named Konohamaru. Maybe she could stop by there and see what she could dig up about Naruto. Looking into the past, Team 7 had been given a day off by Kakashi. Apparently he was looking into something and it would take some time, so he left them a free day. Naruto wanted to see Lee in the hospital as the boy was going into his surgery soon and he wanted to support him. Sakura had agreed to go as well. Sasuke said he had better things to do, which of course started an argument with Naruto that lasted for a bit. Temari said she had a few things she needed to take care of and would meet up with Naruto back at their home. Temari figured this was the best time to start looking into the blonde puzzle that was Naruto Uzumaki. She had read his file back in Suna when she was told who she was to marry. The files they did have came from the Shared Information Act that the previous alliance had that would give the basic information on active ninja that weren't Anbu. It was a way to prevent villages that were friendly with each other to prevent complications while on mission or met up in the field. Also, Suna had just before the invasion had made up files on all active ninja they could find. The Suna intelligence section had stopped every other mission for the planned invasion of Konoha. Given the failure of that invasion, Temari had a good guess that many people lost their jobs if not their lives for failure to gain the proper intelligence for just how strong this village was. At any rate, she had memorized his records, but some of it didn't make any sense as she had gotten to know Naruto. He was an orphan from a family name that had no record to it. Uzumaki just didn't seem to exist in any records that her people could find, and there had never been an Uzumaki clan at any point that she could find. But to gain entrance into the academy you needed to be sponsored, usually by a guardian or parent. But Naruto's had been signed by the third Hokage himself, which was very odd. Even the third had emancipated Naruto at a young age, taking him out of the orphanage and even gave him an apartment. There was obviously something going on. It was nagging at her lately. Naruto's grade showed him the last in his class and she had to admit that his book smarts weren't all that great. His taijutsu was basic, but he improvised a lot in his fights while disregarding his own safety, like injuries didn't matter to him. His ninjutsu, however, was very impressive as he had learned a move of the fourths in a month. He was also making good progress with his wind manipulation as well. There were also times he had great insight into things, so his grade didn't make much sense to her. There were so many things that didn't make sense, so she needed to start piecing things together. That was to start talking to those that knew Naruto the most. The ramen stand people seemed nice and apparently knew him very well, but right now she was heading for the academy. Hopefully she could find this Iruka that Naruto had talked about. She had seen a picture that the young man had of himself with strange goggles on his head with a man with a scar on his face, both smiling. Know where the man was and what he looked like. She had an idea it wouldn't be a problem to find him. Thankfully, Naruto had given her a very good tour of the village in her time here, both in the Chunin exams and her living here. Temari had started to know the village fairly well. She walked her way to where the academy was and remembered Naruto showing her the building. To her it wasn't all that impressive, a few stories, and looked like it could hold somewhere around 5 to 8 classes. She also remembered this as the place where they had met up for the Chunin exams with that written test that Scared Freak made them take. She still couldn't believe all that hard work in that test was for nothing. Temari then smiled as she remembered the end of that test, with Naruto slamming his hand onto the desk and voicing his claim of not giving up. At the time she didn't think much of it, but looking back she had to admit that Naruto wasn't going to let anyone or anything stand in his way of being Hokage. When she got inside there was a helpful lady at the front desk that told her where to find the teacher by the name of Iruka. Temari signed in and made her way to where the classroom was. She wasn't sure if the class was in session or not, and if it was she would have to wait for a break to talk to him. Fortunately, when she got to the room the door was open. She looked inside the empty class with only a man writing on papers, most likely grading them. She could see kids playing outside the window in the back of the building and guessed she had good timing. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Iruka," Temari asked as she entered the room. Iruka looked up to the blonde girl a little confused at first seeing the Leaf Village symbol around her neck. He didn't remember who she was at first, but the fan on her back made him kick in his memory. He had seen the Sand team only a couple of times and never up close, but that fan was something that stuck out in memory. "Ah, you wouldn't happen to be Temari, would you?" Iruka asked in a friendly manner. Temari nodded. "Yes, I am, and I take it that you are Iruka." It was more a statement than question, but Iruka nodded anyway as he stood up to grade her. She had heard all about the whole arranged marriage with Naruto and he felt for the boy. He had been so busy the past couple of weeks he kept missing Naruto at the ramen stand. "So what can I do for you?" he asked her. Temari wasn't sure what to say at first. She had thought about several things to talk about but decided to lead up to the really important questions she wanted to ask. "Naruto has talked a lot about many of the people in his life. I think I've met most of them, but I wanted to meet more of them. Since they're important to him, I thought I should get to know them as his future wife." It was still a bit hard to say that. Not that marrying Naruto was something she hated. In fact, lately she was starting to get comfortable with the idea. She could have been chosen to marry a lot worse in her opinion. It was that she was 16 and going to marry already at that age next month. "Given that, I felt I should meet them," Temari added. "Plus we haven't really gotten any visitors, so I wanted to make sure they knew they were welcomed in our household. Although that pervert of a Sanin better be on his good behavior from now on," Temari darkly thought. "Well, that's good to hear," Iruka smiled at her. "I kept meaning to come by, but I've been busy lately with all the tests this week. But I would like to stop by as I haven't seen Naruto in a while and want to see how he's doing." Temari gave a small smile at the man. He gave off a very friendly vibe and he seemed to really care about Naruto. In their talks together she got the feeling that Naruto looked up to Iruka like an older brother in many ways. She could see that the feeling was mutual here as well for the older man. "I was wondering," Temari said. "Could you tell me more about him? I mean, every time I think I know more about Naruto something just comes up, and well." Iruka gave a small laugh at that. "Yeah, he's very surprising, isn't he? I've known him for years and he still surprises me at times. So what would you like to know about him? Anything you can tell me. I want to know what his life was like here at school." Temari noted a slight drop in his smile. "Well, he was always a unique student," Iruka sighed. "He pulled pranks, got into trouble, and he just really acted out a lot. Although I know he's a good kid, he just wanted attention and didn't care how or what kind of attention he got growing up. Because he was an orphan and didn't have any family," Temari stated, but as Iruka nodded she felt like he was holding back something else but couldn't place what it was. "I lost my parents at an early age as well, but I still remember them," Iruka said solemnly. "It was tougher for Naruto since he has no memory at all of who his parents were." "Do you know?" Temari asked him. "I'm sorry I don't, and I wish I did." The older man sighed. "He once asked me himself when he was younger, but I couldn't tell him anything. He looked so sad at that, and I can't think of a worse thing for not knowing your parents or family." Temari thought back to her mother and brothers, but when she got to her father there was no love for that image. She had nothing but a cold attachment to him, as he was a father in blood only to her. So cold to everyone, even his own family, plus he had been the one to force the demon into Gaara. It was that she guessed that led to the death of her mother as well, so to her she could have lived without knowing that part of her family. So how come his grade have been so bad? Temari asked him, who looked a little surprised by the question. I've heard Sasuke call him an idiot and dead last many times, and I found out he was at the bottom of the class, but it makes no sense. He's shown a lot more skill than most genin his age and even has some skills above a chunin. Iruka was surprised at that. Sure, he knew Naruto was special and had gotten stronger since his time at the academy, but this girl's claims were more than he thought that Naruto had done. Then again, lately he had heard people talking about Naruto in a more positive light. Sure, some people were still against him, mainly the civilian branch of the village, but a lot of the ninjas had been impressed by him lately. The rumor of how he had defeated Gaara was also going around. Many thought that was in some way linked to Temari being here as well. Really? How so? Iruka asked, interested. Well, he can summon toads. I'm teaching him wind manipulation and he can use something called a Rasengan. Iruka was struck with surprise at the last part. He knew what the Rasengan was, as did most of the ninja in the village. His surprise was later turned into a very proud smile as Naruto was starting to shape up into a great ninja. There's something else I've been hoping to ask. Temari had figured with the small talk out of the way she could get into the real heart of the matter. I was hoping that if you knew his family then you could explain something to me, but I guess that's out of the question now. You see, I've been noticing cold looks at Naruto. At first I thought it was me, as I know there are many that still don't like Suna. But the cold looks that Naruto gets seems to also be when I'm not close to him. I thought maybe the Uzumaki family had done something in the past and it fell onto Naruto's shoulders. Iruka suddenly didn't like where this was going. The girl was digging into Naruto's past and that wasn't good. The secret of the 9 tails was an S-class secret, and so far the girl had noticed how some of the older generation still had a cold hatred for Naruto, or at least what was inside of him. Well, he has pulled many pranks in his life and some people never can forget or forgive, he said to her, hoping to evade the truth. Temari didn't look convinced by that. I thought about it, but it wouldn't add up with the amount of looks he gets. There's something more, and I had been hoping that to find out what the source of it was. Iruka could see that Temari was a smart girl who could see more than what was on the surface, that was both good and bad. Good for her out in the field, as that had saved lives of many ninja from failing to fall into traps and ambushes. But the bad thing was she was putting that into looking into Naruto's past. Temari was going to say something else, but she was interrupted when a very loud voice was heard. Iruka-sensei. Temari turned to see 3 kids running into the room, and they seemed familiar for some reason to Temari, especially the loud one with the long scarf. Konohamaru, what is going on? Why aren't you 3 outside with the others? Iruka asked them. We accidentally kicked the ball we were using onto the roof and hoped you could let us go up and get it, Konohamaru said, and then noticed the tall blonde girl there. It took a moment for him to realize that he knew this girl. The last time he had seen her, she had been wearing a white battle dress and not the purple one she had on now. Ah, I know you. Konohamaru pointed accusingly at her. You were with that jerk with the makeup on his face. Then it clicked where Temari had met him. He had been the little brat that ran into her younger brother Kankuro. Konohamaru, be nice. This is Temari-san, who will be marrying Naruto, Iruka told the young boy. All 3 kids looked shocked at the news. Naruto had told them that he was stuck into this, but they didn't know who the girl was. Although this was something that he never would have thought, that the mean blonde girl from before was marrying Naruto. Why does Naruto Nichin have to marry this girl? Konohamaru pouted angrily. Temari narrowed her eyes at that. Was the kid implying that she wasn't good enough for Naruto? She was the daughter of the late Kage, top of her class and one of the best damn kunoichi in her age group and even in a few other age groups. She had given up a lot for this alliance marriage as well, and she would be damned if this little brat said she wasn't good enough. With hands on her hips, she leaned down to glare at the little kid. He had the good sense to take a slight step back from her. Look, brat, it's not like either of us had a choice in the matter, but we're both making the best of it. Yeah, well, you better be nice to him or else. The little kid threatened, although everyone in the room knew it was an empty threat. He was just trying to stick up for Naruto and look tough in front of everyone. Temari looked at the kid, and for a split second, she thought him almost a mini clone of Naruto at that moment. In fact, he acted a lot like the blonde boy, and she started to see the influence Naruto seemed to have on him. The boy seemed to really look up to Naruto, almost with a kind of hero worship. She was wondering what he did to get the boy's total respect like this. Temari gave a small smile. You really look up to him, huh? Konohamaru was puzzled by that for a moment. Yeah. Why is that? The boy wasn't sure if he should say and looked to his two best friends who nodded. Well, before him everyone called me, honorable grandson, just because my grandpa he looked a bit saddened at that. It still hurt that his grandfather was gone now. He had gotten over that fact that Tsunade was now Hokage, but still it was a missing piece of his life that he would never get back. Was the Hokage. He finished. Temari hadn't known that. In fact, it was Orochimaru that had tricked her village into attacking and killed this boy's grandfather, as well as was responsible for so much death. Everyone called me by that title and no one outside of my family called me Konohamaru, the boy continued. Everyone treated me differently and I didn't like it. It was like no one saw the real me and only this, honorable grandson, they kept calling me. I wanted to be seen as Konohamaru, as myself. But then Naruto was the first one to notice me, the real me. Konohamaru's face seemed to light up at this point. He takes time to play with us and teaches us all kinds of things. He's the first real friend I had before I met Moegi and Udon. Yeah, Naruto Nichan is the best, Moegi said as Udon nodded his head. Temari should have known that Naruto would have this effect on people. After all, it was him that seemed to have changed Gaara for the better. Wherever he went, the boy seemed to bring new life into the lives of others. So what has he been teaching you kids anyway? Iruka suddenly got a very bad feeling at this point when he saw the familiar glint in Konohamaru's eyes. It was the same look Naruto gave before he pulled off that technique. He taught me this great move that he made up for dealing with perverts. He then ran through the hand signs before Iruka could yell at him to stop. Sexy jutsu. Temari saw the smoke and the shock on her face would have been priceless to her brother. There before her was now a very attractive brunette girl in a seductive pose who was totally naked with a few pieces of smoke here and there. There was a thud as her head wiped around to see Iruka on the floor with blood from his nose. She then turned her attention back to the naked woman with a glare. Konohamaru turned back into his normal form with his eyes closed in a huge smile. What do you think? It's one of his most famous creations. Temari didn't say a word until she got close enough to the boy and gripped his ear very painfully. The boy yelled out as he tried to break away, but she gripped it tighter, letting him know that he wasn't getting away and shouldn't try. Are you telling me that my Naruto made that jutsu and taught it to a kid? Temari said in an angry tone. Why, yeah. The boy winced as his ear was starting to hurt. I'm going to kill him, Temari said as she let go of his ear. I never want to see you pull something like that in front of me again. Are we clear? The three kids nodded as one as they took a few paces back in fear of the blonde woman. They watched as she stalked out of the room in search of her fiancé and teach him the proper things that you do and do not teach children. The Konohamaru Corps watched her leave and were starting to pray that Naruto could either outrun her or hope she didn't actually kill him. Iruka had managed to recover, and although he didn't like that jutsu, at least he wouldn't admit to liking it. He had to be thankful that it got Temari's mind off Naruto's past. This could end up bad, Iruka thought as he cleaned off the blood on his jacket. She's getting a little too close. I'll have to talk to Naruto about this, as only he can be the one to tell her, or at last he should tell her. She'll have to know eventually, but I just hope he can trust her enough to open up about this. Later that day, Naruto and Sakura were walking out of the hospital. Both of them were happy that Lee was in high spirits for his operation and had already challenged Naruto to a spar when he got all better. Naruto, being Naruto, agreed to it all too happily. Sakura was amazed that Tsunade could be able to heal the kind of damage done to Lee. She was truly an amazing person. I'm so glad that Lee will get better, Sakura said as they walked on together. Yeah, I'm sure that Tsunade Bachan will heal him up in no time, Naruto said with that ever-present fox-like grin on his face. Sakura gave a small smile and nodded. Sometimes I wish I could be as strong as her, Sakura wished out loud. She's one of the strongest ninja in the world and can heal so many things that most people would think impossible. Hey, you're getting stronger every day, Sakura-chan, Naruto said to his friend. Temari is helping you out and Kakashi-sensei isn't being as lazy as usual, well except on those stupid D-rank missions. But you shouldn't sell yourself short, We've all have come a long way and we can all still get stronger together. Sakura was grateful for Naruto's outlook, he always made things better for some reason. Still, she had been wondering just what kind of ninja she wanted to be lately. She was learning her water jutsus and nearly got them down perfectly. Her hand-to-hand was getting a lot better. Her genjutsu was just above average, mostly dealing with spotting and disrupting them. Temari was a long-range wind user with tactical thinking. Sasuke was a mid to close-range fighter with his Sharingan to copy the moves of the enemies made him a great fighter. Naruto, she had to admit, was just as good lately. His skills were growing so fast she couldn't keep up with him. But what could she say of herself? She thought of other teams and how they blended well into each other. Each person's special talents complemented each other. Tenten was a weapons mistress in the making. Neji was a great fighter and scout. Lee's specialty in taijutsu. Ino with her mind abilities could gain information like no one else. Shino with his bugs. Kiba with Akamaru were great trackers, and the list went on. So what could she say about herself that made her stand out? Overall, she was very average, so what was her strengths? She had great chakra control, but what could that be used for? So far the only two main options would be genjutsu, but that wasn't Kakashi's specialty. If she had been put with Kurenai, she was sure that she would have gone that route, but the only other thing was medical jutsu, and who could train in her in that? Hey Sakura-chan, what are you thinking so hard about? Naruto asked, seeing how quiet she had been. Her face had taken on a serious thinking expression. Huh, oh nothing, just thinking about the future is all, she said, smiling at him. She didn't want to worry him, after all this was her problem and she wanted to be the one to figure it out. Naruto just shrugged and let it rest as they walked on. Eventually they had to go their separate ways and said goodbye to each other. Naruto was walking on his way to his home and wondered if Temari would be home yet. He smiled at that. It felt really nice to go home and someone could actually be there for once. Hey, Naruto. Naruto looked over and saw Iruka waving to him. The boy got a huge smile on his face, he hadn't seen him in a while. Iruka-sensei. Naruto yelled and ran over to him. How have you been, Naruto? The man asked him. Naruto put on that foxy grin of his again. It's going great, I'm learning all kinds of new things and I've gotten tons stronger. So I've heard. Iruka smiled and then he got a more serious look on his face. Naruto, I have something important to talk to you about. But not here, it's something we can't really talk about in the open. Naruto blinked in confusion for a bit until he figured out what he was talking about and he felt his stomach sink. It had to be about the fox, as there was nothing else that Iruka could mean. Naruto nodded and they quickly left for Iruka's apartment. Naruto sat down on the couch as Iruka sat down with him, and Naruto was a little worried about just what he wanted to talk about exactly. Naruto, you should know that Temari came by the school today, Iruka said to him. She was looking into your past, it would seem. Naruto got a very bad feeling at the moment. He had seen how smart she had been. Hell, that shogi game she had brought with her, he had never even came close to beating her, and she knew a lot of things as well. He would have to say she was one of the smartest people he knew. If she put together that his birthday was the same day that the Kyuubi was defeated, she might start to put things together. He looked down at his feet. Things were finally starting to go well, and now if she found out about the demon, she might hate him. It wasn't fair how this stupid fox inside of him kept screwing with his life. No one had wanted to adopt him, no one would recognize him, and he had been alone for most of his life because of it. Sure, things had gotten a bit better lately, but he was still afraid. It was the fear of being rejected and going back to that loneliness again that prevented him from telling his friends the truth. He just didn't want to lose more to the damn fox again. He had too much taken from him by that demon as it was. Naruto, maybe you should tell her before she finds out, Iruka said gently to him. But what if she hates me? Naruto asked him desperately. I mean, maybe she won't find out. Iruka gave him a look of pity as the boy had to deal with so much in his life. Naruto, I think she might figure things out sooner or later. Plus she'll be your wife soon, so doesn't she have a right to know? Naruto felt a little guilty at that. He still remembered how on that trip to get Tsunade, he had ran into Itachi Uchiha and that strange fish guy. They had been after him because of what was inside of him. They had even gotten into the village and put Kakashi in the hospital as well. If they came again, would they use Temari against him? He could see them doing it as well, and it didn't seem right to put her in danger and not tell her. It will be better if it came from you than some stranger, or if she figured it out. Those words hit him just as hard. Naruto knew he had to tell her, but in all honesty he wished he didn't have to. How would he even begin to tell her this? Would she call off the whole wedding thing because of it, or would she end up being cold to him for the rest of their lives together? Naruto felt like a pit of blackness in his core at the thought of that kind of life. He wanted her to at least like him, but who would want to be with someone who had a demon in them? Ever since he had found out what was inside of him, he had been scared to tell anyone, but now he didn't have a choice. He thanked Iruka for telling him, and he walked out of the apartment with his hands in his pockets and a downcast look. Iruka felt bad for Naruto, but he had to tell him what was going on, and he had to make the choice of what to tell Temari. Iruka just prayed that things would work out for the boy. Truth comes out. Sound base 5, T Country. Orochimaru was still in his bed as he tried to blot out the pain in his arms. It had been too long since that old man had taken his arms from him with that jutsu. If the old man wasn't dead, he would have killed him in the most slow and painful of ways. He grunted in pain as his arms were slowly decaying. Having the flesh of your body slowly falling apart on you gave you pain unlike anything a person could imagine. Of course he knew it wasn't really his body. His original body was long since gone. All the research into immortality had left him only one option: to cast off an old body like a snake sheds its skin. The bodies of course would have to be injected and altered so that he would be able to use some of his more special abilities. It was time consuming, but thankfully he had refined the process by now. At first it took him nearly a year for the body to be altered enough, but now it only took a few months. But no matter what, he could never make the bodies last. They burned out too quickly for him. 3 years, and he needed to find a new host, and he had to be careful because not just any body would do. Orochimaru had to make sure they were strong bodies, as weak ones wouldn't last as long and they couldn't be enhanced enough with all the drugs and forbidden techniques he needed to put into them. He had learned early on to not just have one person to be his next host, but to find those that were perfect for him was hard to find. Only the truly exceptional could be his body, like Kimimaro, the leader of the Sound 5. Well, Sound 4 now, his bloodline ability was truly one of a kind. But the boy was dying and wouldn't last even with the curse mark on him, and so the boy was on life support, kept alive for the last time. Orochimaru would need him. A few others could be used, but he wanted Sasuke Uchiha. The Sharingan with the ability to copy all jutsu would let him learn in 3 years what would take him 300 years to learn. After his failure with Itachi, Sasuke was the only option. While true the boy was a bit too young, Orochimaru had ways to alter the body to that of a more adult form. But he needed the boy for other reasons. With the boy's body he could use the DNA to help recreate the Uchiha clan. His previous experiments in Konoha before his exile, he had been trying to recreate the wood abilities of the first, and he felt he had been close. One had survived, and although he didn't know it, he had heard rumors of a masked Anbu with wood abilities. When he heard of that, Orochimaru had started up with his DNA project again, and when he got Sasuke he could find a way to make a whole new line of Sharingan users to use in the future. He could infuse a fetus with that and let it grow in a tank, or he could always do artificial insemination. He had plans for both at any point. The strongest female warriors were already picked out in advance, and Kabuto kept an eye out for any future prospects. Unlike his ex-teammate, he never was interested in the whole Sual side of relationships. To Orochimaru it seemed too vulgar a process. He never understood that part of humanity, and he never would. He just felt it was a good thing he was like this. It was only a distraction and he could focus more on his work. Pain flared up again in his arms and he cried out for Kabuto. He needed more medicine to help with the pain. Soon the flesh of his arms wouldn't be able to hold together, and then infections would start to spread through his body. Even with all the enhancements, if his body was too weak he could still get sick. Kabuto tried to numb the nerves, but for some reason it wasn't working. He yelled again when the boy hadn't shown up. The door flew open as Kabuto rushed into the room. Orochimaru yelled for more medicine and the boy ran to the side table where they all were. He injected several compounds into his body through the ruined arms, and then into the main body. The needles were less painful than his arms at the moment, but soon the pain started to lessen. it never left him, but it was now tolerable. Where the hell is Sasuke? Orochimaru demanded. The Sound Four are still watching him as per your orders, Kabuto said as he put the medicine away. Apparently he's been training himself trying to learn how to use your little gift so far. But they haven't risked being seen yet, even though thanks to your knowledge on Konoha's security they could still be found out. I don't know how much longer I can wait, Orochimaru said angrily. If the old fool hadn't used that jutsu on me I could afford to wait, but I need a new body. With Tsunade's refusal to heal me I need a new body. He still was supposed to have at least 2 years more with this new body, but he had to change quickly. Normally changing so fast wasn't a good idea as it would weaken him to keep changing too fast, but he had no choice. He wanted the Uchiha body for so long and one was almost within his grasp. The boy's lust for power, for revenge would surely motivate the boy to seek him out. Plus the curse seal was also there, it would give him power while feeding on his negative emotions and even increasing them. That was one of his best pieces of work, something that would slowly twist the minds that used them. The darker the urges, the better the seal would work. It was unfortunate that his first success in Anko had been a disappointment. The girl would have made a fine apprentice and maybe even a good host body one day. But she lacked the need for power. She had been physically strong enough to survive, but she was too weak as a person. She was too soft, and so he left her to die in that place. He had been surprised to learn she had survived, but it had been fun to run into his old student again. She had grown but was still too soft. The curse mark worked against her because she fought against it, instead of embracing it. Lord Orochimaru, Kabuto asked him, how much longer do I have? Orochimaru asked. At the rate of decay I would say 2 weeks at best. Orochimaru's face twisted in pain and anger. He couldn't afford to wait that long. Sasuke was taking too long to join him and he was quickly running out of options. Start the preparations for a new host, Orochimaru spat out. Uchiha District. Sasuke had been working hard on trying to understand the seal that Orochimaru put on him. After his team was let go for the day, he had gotten as many scrolls on sealing and seals that he could from the library of his clan. Although he only knew the simple ones for how to seal weapons, he had thought it wouldn't be that tough. Although called a genius, it turned out that seals required a different type of genius. The formulas were very complex and just getting a rudimentary grasp of it was difficult. There was also the fact that Orochimaru had created this seal himself and there were no official records, although he bet there were classified ones, but even he couldn't get those. Only high-ranking Jonins would be the only ones to get those kinds of records and would most likely need to have the Hokage's approval too. He knew he couldn't go to Kakashi to ask for them because he wouldn't approve of what he was doing. Sasuke needed more power and this seal seemed like the best way to go about it. He remembered when it first activated, he had never felt so powerful or so alive at that moment. He had been enjoying himself in ways he had thought lost to him. When he had been trying to tear that Sound Genin's arms off, he had liked it. All battles after, he had never felt like that again and he was wondering why. In battle he only thought about victory, but that point he had for the first time actually liked being in battle. He had thrived in the heat of the moment and from even the pain he had been inflicting at the time to the Sound Genin. At any rate, so far the seal was too complicated for him to figure anything out. Whatever it was, he had to work it out on his own. Which led him to his practice sessions by the lake where he had mastered that fire jutsu. That had been when his father had finally taken notice of him. When his father had told him that he was going to train Sasuke personally, Sasuke had been overjoyed. He had been living in his older brother's shadow all his life and finally he was being recognized. He had gone to bed that night happier than he had been in a long time and couldn't wait until the next day. But that was the night when his world was destroyed. Itachi had but butchered his clan and family, had tortured him for 3 days and left him broken there among the blood and corpses of his mother and father. He was alone in the world. There was no brother to look up to, no father for advice and no mother who always made him feel safe and warm. All he felt was the numbing cold of the hole that was left in his life. Sasuke started up his warm-up routine as he started to practice his family fighting style. He remembered the times his brother would train him. Back then everything was good. He had loved his older brother and looked up to him, which what made his betrayal all the more hard on the younger Sasuke. The one person he thought he could trust, shattered that bond forever. Sasuke threw out a series of punches as the memories came flooding back to him. He remembered after he had been found, how he had been in the hospital for a few months. He was shaken by the experience, he hadn't been able to sleep at night at all. Every shadow he had looked to see if Itachi would come back to finish the job. Sasuke had waited all night long in case his older brother had changed his mind and came to kill him too. He could only sleep in the days when he felt safe, but at night he waited. Sasuke now started with the kicking combos, then into blocks and parries. His body moved on its own as his mind battled with the memories that were swarming him. The fact was that he didn't hate Itachi at first, no, that came later. At first he had been scared of Itachi, scared that he was going to wake up one night with Itachi over his bed. Those red eyes glaring at him as he plunged a sword into Sasuke's heart. After a few months when he knew Itachi wasn't coming back, he had gone home for the first time. He had seen the empty homes and streets and he could see the fresh paint to cover the blood that had been spilt there. He stood in the center of the Uchiha district for a long time that day. He felt the tears fall for the first time that day. He had fallen to his knees as he cried his heart out. All that pain and rage he had been bottling up came pouring out of him. He howled his anger into the empty area. He didn't know how long he had been there. The sun had been setting at that point, but by the end of it he felt empty. There were no more tears in him, and he hadn't cried again since that day. He had used up all the tears left in his life in a single moment. All that was left was the emptiness, that cold empty feeling like a hole in his chest. But soon he felt something else there, a cold burning sensation. It was the cold fury that was building up in him. He looked up with hard eyes around him. It was at that moment when he truly vowed to kill his brother, to seek revenge for his entire clan. Sasuke felt the pain where the mark was flaring up. It was an intense sensation and for a moment he could barely stand. The pain slowly faded as he tried to think what caused it to flare up like that. Kakashi had told him that the seal around it was only as strong as his will, but something else must have happened. He had been thinking long and hard about the cursed seal, why it worked at the start and why the other times it had activated it had only weakened him. That first time it activated, that was what he needed to try and focus on. When he had fought Gaara he had needed more power and it had activated, but not like the first time. His body wouldn't respond normally and he felt even weaker. So what was different about the Gaara fight and the fight with the Sound Genin? He came to realization it was the emotions involved. With Gaara he had felt fear and doubt, but not with the Sound Genin. There was more too. It had flared up just when he was thinking of that day he had made his vow to his clan. Something in that moment had triggered it as well. Well, I could try it, not like I got anything to lose. Sasuke thought to himself. He closed his eyes and tried to remember that day again. He tried to focus on the pain and rage that had been inside of him. He thought of Itachi and what he had done. He thought of their last fight and how he had gone after Naruto of all people. His brother had tossed him aside like he was nothing but had been focused only on Naruto. Naruto, why are you so strong now? You're the dead last, you come from no clan, have no bloodline, there is nothing special about you and yet you keep getting stronger. You kept getting taught the things that I could use to complete my mission. Even Suna sees something in you, most likely for beating Gaara. So why? What makes him so special? Sasuke yelled out as the curse seal activated. He cried out in pain, but this time he didn't try to fight it. He embraced what he was feeling and soon the pain was passing. The black marks, if he could see, were crawling over his body, now covering half of it. He started to feel the power flowing into him and it felt great, better than great even. He threw his head back and laughed as the feeling of the raw power rushing through his body. This is it, this is the power that I need. Now I just need to tame it. Sasuke thought to himself as he grinned. He started his physical workout trying to see how long he could keep the curse seal's power flowing through his body. He was faster and stronger like this. When he met Itachi again he would use the power of this seal as a surprise and finally kill his brother. Uzumaki home. Temari had been looking all over for Naruto. She tried the ramen stand and then the fourth's head, but so far no luck. Even the Hokage hadn't seen him and none of his friends either. After she had left the school, she was on a mission to find Naruto and to let him know that teaching kids those kinds of things were not okay. She was still pissed after all this time, in fact, not only pissed but her feet were killing her, which only made her more mad. There was only one place left to check, and that was at home. She stopped in her tracks at that thought. When the hell did I ever start to think of this place as home? Temari asked herself. While she still considered Suna her home and always will, she was surprised by how she was starting to think of her two-story house as home. She sure didn't count the village as home, at least not yet. But for some reason the house was starting to feel like home to her. Sure, she had all her stuff there, but it was more than that, more than just having a place to live. She was actually starting to enjoy her life with Naruto. It was odd, but she was starting to actually like the guy. He made you feel at ease with yourself, he was always warm and his happiness was infectious at times. She shook her head, remembering that she was supposed to be mad at him. As the house came into view, she noticed something on the roof. As she came closer, she could see that someone was sitting on it. Temari had an idea of who it was as well. All that walking around and he was there the entire time. Temari wasn't sure to be pissed or just happy that she had finally found him. She quickly managed to get onto the roof, and there he was, sitting there with his knees pulled up and his arms resting on them. He was looking far off, but his eyes weren't focused as he was in deep thought about something. Temari was about to get out her battle fan when she stopped and took notice of his face. While living with him, she had seen the various faces he had, but this was one she had never seen before. She couldn't help but notice just how different it was, and she was wondering if she was seeing a hidden side of him. Well, I'll ask what's going on, then I'll give him hell for teaching children that perverted jutsu. Alright, so what the hell is wrong? Temari asked, the irritation in her voice she couldn't hide. Naruto jumped at her voice. He had been so deep in thought that he hadn't even noticed her arriving. He put on that smiling face of his as he scratched the back of his head nervously. For the past hour or so he had been about what to say and how to go about this. He knew that she deserved to know the full truth of the matter, but he couldn't help but worry how she would see him. Oh, well, I guess nothing much. He chuckled but soon stopped, seeing the serious look on her face. Naruto, she said simply, more like a hidden command than her asking him anything. He flinched a bit before he sighed and looked back out over the village as he got more serious again. Hey Temari, what if you knew something about me, something that might change how you see me? Now Temari was losing her previous anger as she was getting more interested. Was this that something that she had been looking into? Was this that secret that seemed to surround the blonde ninja? She sat down next to him, looking at him. She could see the look in his eyes. They held a pain in them that she hadn't seen in a very long time. She remembered how Gaara's eyes had looked like that, all that pain and loss. Then one night Gaara had changed and his eyes took on that awful look in them. The look of a madman that would kill anyone, even her. For years she had been terrified of Gaara, but then Naruto had changed him. Looking at those blue expressive eyes of his, she was reminded of those old times. Naruto, you can tell me, whatever it is. She told him, her voice gaining a bit more of a gentle tone. She wasn't sure why, but seeing those eyes he had one now reached her. She felt a part of her wanting to comfort him. She wanted to see that usual happy look in them. Naruto was silent a moment, trying to get his courage. It's just that, have you noticed how some of the villagers don't like me? Temari nodded her head. There's a reason for it. It's not as bad as it used to be lately, but I guess I can see why many of the older generation didn't like me. Naruto said. Do you know of the Kyuubi attack over 13 years ago? Temari nodded. Yeah, I read about it. The great nine-tailed fox, the most powerful of all the Biju, it attacked here and it was your fourth Hokage that killed it. Well, it turns out that it wasn't really killed, Naruto said. Temari was confused as everyone knew the story, even those outside the village. It was said even Iwagakure no Sato celebrated the death of the fourth every year on October 10th. There was something about that date that was nagging her for some reason. It took her a moment to realize that it was Naruto's birthday. She had memorized as much on him that Suna had, and it was listed his birthday as October 10th. In fact, doing the math, he had been born on the day the demon had attacked. Then she remembered his fight with Gaara, when he had turned himself and that huge toad into a replica of the Nine Tails. The sudden realization came crashing down on her, and why shouldn't it? After all, if she was right, then Naruto was exactly like Gaara. Your Agent Cherokee, she said, surprised by the revelation. Naruto was taken aback by that. He didn't figure that she would figure it out. She was a lot smarter than he had originally thought. So, you're like Gaara then, she said to him. Yeah. Naruto nodded his head, a little afraid to look her in the eyes. He didn't want to see any fear in them. He was actually starting to like her, and it would be just like his luck for her to not like him because of the stupid fox in his body. A lot of the older generation didn't like me because they saw me as the demon and not the jailer, Naruto said sadly. They never did anything physical, but no one would look at me, and the few that did, they only gave me those cold eyes. Some would say things like, demon brat, and monster, to me. Temari couldn't help but feel bad. She had seen what that kind of life had done to Gaara. It was amazing that Naruto hadn't turned out the same. So everyone knows. Naruto shook his head. The third placed a law that no one was to talk about it or tell anyone else. The old man hoped that everyone in the younger generation would see me normally, but it didn't work out so good. Temari could guess. The parents would most likely encourage their children to have the same behavior towards Naruto that they had. Children, being children, wouldn't really question their parents after all. In a way, it made her sick, but then again, how was she any different? Maybe if she had tried harder to be a better sister to Gaara, he wouldn't have turned out the same way. Her father had told her and Kankuro to avoid Gaara, and like the good daughter, she had done that. It was just another reason she felt nothing for her father. He had torn their family apart. I was alone for a very long time, Naruto said to her, but then a small smile got on his lips. But I had the old man. He could visit me often, and then I found Iruka-sensei. And now I have a lot of friends and people that care for me, and people who I will protect. Temari was amazed that he could think that way. Was what got through to Gaara? Was this the reason that he had liked the idea of her marrying Naruto? Because her baby brother could relate to the other boy. To go through that kind of life and not end up like Gaara spoke to Temari of the kind of inner strength the boy had. She smiled a little, remembering how she had seen that strength in the Chunin exams and against Gaara himself. Naruto's smile faded a bit. Anyways, I just figured you deserved to know the truth before the wedding. That you should know what you're getting into, and, well, I guess I can understand if you wouldn't want to be with me. There was a sudden silence, and then Naruto felt a fist hitting the back of his head. Baka! Temari shouted angrily at him. You really think that would mean much to me? Naruto, holding the back of his head, looked at her surprised. My brother went through all of that too. He's like you, remember? Well, yeah, but you were really scared of Gaara, weren't you? He asked her, confused. He would remember the terror that had been on her face when Gaara first showed up in that tree. He had been afraid to see that look of terror in her eyes when she was looking at him. But she wasn't afraid of him. Angry, sure, but he could live with that. Temari's anger fell away, knowing what he was getting at. I was afraid of Gaara. For so long he would have killed anyone if he felt like it. It was always dangerous being around him, but after you two fought, something in him had changed. Before I came here, we were actually repairing our relationship. I don't know if I ever thanked you for that, but I do. She looked him in the eyes and gave him a small smile. Thank you for giving me my brother back. Naruto blinked a few times and smiled. He remembered how Gaara had seemed different, but he hadn't known about how Temari wasn't terrified of him anymore. Temari sighed as she recomposed herself. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It does explain a few things about you though. You're the first person I told this secret to, Naruto said, a bit happy how she took it. I mean, I was afraid if others found out they would treat me like the older generation. Well, they're idiots, she said to him. And you're an idiot for thinking that of me. You should learn to trust me more. After all, we're going to be married soon, so we might as well start to trust each other more. Naruto smiled and nodded. Yeah, you're right. I promise, no more secrets between us. Temari nodded her head in agreement. So, how come the demon hasn't overcome you? Temari asked out of curiosity. I mean, Gaara can't sleep because of that demon, and he's got the weakest in him. Naruto blinked, not sure exactly. I guess the seal on me is different. I've only talked to the damn fox once. After I got pushed off a cliff, stupid arrow Senin. He pushed you off a cliff. Temari wondered what the hell was wrong with that old pervert. It was to get me to draw on the fox's chakra, and although I hate it, it did work. Temari made a mental note to not take any kind of training with that old man, he seemed to take things to the extreme. Can I see your seal? Naruto blushed a bit as he pulled up his shirt, he closed his eyes and gathered the chakra. Temari was curious as the kind of seal that was on Naruto, she wanted to see the difference between this one and the one on her brother. Basically, she wanted a comparison to see if there might be a reason why they had such a difference. She got her answer when she saw the seal on Naruto's stomach of all places. Temari wasn't a seal master or even know all that much other than the basics, but just by looking at the seal she knew it wasn't a normal one. It was the most complex thing she had ever seen. She tried to figure out the bits and pieces she could guess it, but overall it was way beyond her. It was also a lot more complex and strong than what Gaara had on him. This explained why Naruto wasn't tormented by his demon, it was held back by the power of this seal. You're lucky you know that. Naruto was confused by her statement when he pulled down his shirt. That kind of seal would let you have a lot more control, Gaara isn't so lucky. Temari sighed. Even with your help he's constantly at war with the demon, he has been all his life. If he had a seal like this on him he might have had a lot more control and even able to sleep normally. Naruto hadn't thought about it that way, he always cursed the fact he had this sealed in him when he found out. But after meeting Gaara he could see where he could have easily been like that. If the fox ever got more control over him, he knew the fox would make him harm anyone and everything around him. Then he thought that maybe there was a way to help him, he only just learned how to seal stuff into scroll. But Naruto did remember how Jiraiya had helped him with that thing Orochimaru did to his seal. A smile grew on his face as he planned to ask him the next time he saw him, if he could help Gaara with this seal like he had done with Naruto's. Now though he was feeling a lot better, he had been so worried that Temari would reject him, but he guessed he should have known better. She was the first person that he had admitted his greatest secret to and she had accepted him and it felt great. But in the end things had worked out and he was hoping that maybe his friends would one day accept this truth as well, when he was ready, that is to tell them. Naruto. Temari said to him. Yeah? He asked, and just as he turned he was hit on the head with her battle fan. Now he may have a hard head, but that thing was heavy and it hurt like hell. He fell onto his back covering his head. What was that for? Naruto managed to say after a moment. That was for something called sexy jutsu, she said angrily, and Naruto froze up. He looked up at the very angry girl towering over him. How did you know about that? Naruto asked carefully, the pain in his head forgotten for the moment. He was too scared to feel pain. I met that little brat, Konohamaru. She grinned evilly at him. Naruto groaned in his head, for the first time he really wished he hadn't taught him that move. He yelped out when she grabbed him by his collar and glared daggers at him right into his face. He was nervously sweating by now, he had forgotten how scary she could be when she was pissed. Now you look here, Temari said dangerously. We can't get out of his marriage, but there will be some ground rules. First off, you are never to use that thing in public. I may be a leaf genin now, but I am still the daughter of a Kage and we both have to put on a good face in the public because of the alliance our marriage represents. Furthermore, you will not teach that to any of our children. It's bad enough that you taught a child such a thing, but you will not do the same for ours. You got that? She told him and he flat out nodded his head as fast as he could. Good, she said calmly and dropped him. But make no mistake Naruto, you'll have a lot of foot rubs to make up for that. She walked off leaving a sore and confused Naruto behind her. He rubbed his head as he squinted his eyes as he thought, one moment she was understanding, then she was violent and scary. Plus what was that about kids? Arg, I'm never going to understand women. Naruto moaned out holding his head.